Most people think timing sex is about syncing calendars, scheduling nights, or making sure the kids are asleep. But the truth is, the real timing of sex isn't about clocks. It's about connection. It's about the energy between two people, the emotional presence they bring, and how well they understand each other's internal rhythms. When couples forget that they don't just miss the right moment, they miss each other entirely. See, desire doesn't follow a universal rule. It doesn't obey the same schedule for everyone. Some people feel most open in the morning, others after dark. Some need emotional closeness to open up physically. Others use physical intimacy as a doorway to emotional closeness. And if you're not talking about that, if you're not learning your partner's emotional clock, you'll keep colliding in frustration, wondering why one of you always seems off while the other is ready. It's not about when, it's about why. That simple shift in thinking changes everything about how we approach intimacy. So many couples obsess over the when to have sex, when to initiate, when it's been too long, when it's the right time. And yet, they rarely ask the deeper, more important question, why are we being intimate in the first place? When sex becomes a scheduled activity instead of a meaningful expression, it starts to lose its heart. You can be perfectly on time and still completely disconnected. The truth is, intimacy without intention starts to feel mechanical. And when something feels mechanical, it stops being about connection. It becomes performance. People start having sex to avoid conflict, to check a box, to match what they think healthy couples are doing. But there's no meaning in that. No emotional resonance. The body may be present, but the heart is not. Over time, that kind of pattern chips away at trust, closeness, and desire. You can't feel emotionally nourished from a moment that had no emotional depth. Desire is not a switch you flip. It's not a task you schedule. It's something that's cultivated from the quality of your relationship, not the quantity of your encounters. And so the better question to ask each other is, why now? Why this moment? Are we connecting out of love, out of safety, out of mutual need? Or are we reaching for each other out of guilt, fear, or obligation? Because when the why is wrong, the timing will never feel right, even if the logistics are perfect. This becomes even more critical in long-term relationships where routine can begin to dull the senses. When couples stop being intentional with their why, sex turns into something transactional. We do it because we should, because it's been a while, because we don't want the other person to feel rejected. And yet, the irony is that sex done from obligation often does lead to rejection, emotional rejection. Because your partner may feel your body, but they don't feel your presence. They don't feel chosen. They feel tolerated. That's a devastating dynamic that breaks down intimacy over time. But when the why is clear, when the motivation is grounded in love, attraction, care, and emotional connection, everything changes. The timing doesn't have to be perfect because the energy is right. Even if it's short, even if it's not wildly passionate every single time, there's a depth that comes from emotional truth. That's the kind of sex that brings people closer instead of leaving them empty. It's not just about climax. It's about communion. Asking why before when also opens the door to honest conversations. It allows couples to express what they really need. Sometimes the why isn't about sex at all. It's about comfort, reassurance, playfulness, or a desire to feel close after conflict. Understanding the why gives each partner permission to show up authentically rather than performing some version of intimacy that isn't even theirs. It removes pressure and replaces it with presence. This isn't to say timing doesn't matter. It does. But timing will always fall flat if the emotional foundation isn't strong. You can wait for the perfect night, the perfect mood, the perfect setting, but if you don't know why you're reaching for each other, that perfection will feel hollow. In contrast, when you're grounded in why, even imperfect moments become meaningful. So the next time you're wondering when to be intimate, pause. Ask yourself and your partner, for why now? Let that question lead the moment, not the clock. Because when the why is real, the connection is real. And that's the only timing that truly matters. Desire has a rhythm, and it's different for both partners. That single truth, when ignored, creates frustration, distance, and confusion in even the most loving relationships. We often assume that sexual desire should be mutual, spontaneous, and aligned. We expect our partner to want us when we want them, to match our energy, to respond on cue. And when that doesn't happen, we internalize it. We make it personal. We tell ourselves stories like, I'm not attractive enough, or they're not interested in me anymore. But the reality is usually much simpler and much more human. Your rhythms are just different. Each person experiences desire in their own unique way. For some, it's spontaneous. It shows up out of nowhere, with no warning, triggered by a look, a moment, or even just a thought. For others, it's responsive. It arises as after they feel emotionally connected, safe, or physically engaged. When couples don't understand this difference, they begin to misinterpret each other's intentions. One partner initiates, the other hesitates. And suddenly, it feels like rejection. But it's not rejection, it's rhythm. Desire is also influenced by factors we don't always acknowledge: stress levels, hormones, sleep, past experiences, body image, unresolved emotions, and daily interactions. It's not linear. It doesn't always follow the same pattern, and it definitely doesn't follow your partner's timeline. What feels like a peak moment of intimacy for one person might feel overwhelming or poorly timed for the other. This is not a problem, it's a reality. And the couples who thrive are the ones who stop fighting reality and start learning each other's rhythms. The danger comes when we assume our partner's rhythm should match our own. That's when we start pressuring, withdrawing, or demanding. That's when we start creating stories in our head that aren't rooted in truth. If they love me, they'd want me right now. If I was enough, I wouldn't have to ask. These thoughts aren't just painful, they're destructive. They lead to silent resentment and unmet needs. But if we recognize that desire works differently for each person, we can respond with curiosity instead of criticism. Curiosity sounds like, what helps you feel more open to connection? What times of day feel best for you? What kind of emotional space do you need to want intimacy? These questions don't just give answers. They build safety. And safety is the soil where desire grows. The more understood a person feels, the more they relax. The more they relax, the more desire has room to rise. That's not manipulation, that's emotional attunement. It's also important to remember that rhythms change. What worked a year ago may not work now. What felt natural in the beginning of a relationship may shift with age, health, career demands, or parenting. That's not failure, that's growth. The couples who last are the ones who keep learning each other. They keep listening. They adapt. They don't panic when rhythms drift out of sync. They stay connected and patient until they realign. The real goal is not to be in perfect sexual sync all the time. The goal is to understand each other's rhythms well enough that you can meet in the middle. To know that when your desire is high and theirs is low, it's not rejection, it's a difference. To trust that even when desire doesn't appear on schedule, love hasn't left. And to keep building a relationship where both partners feel safe enough to be honest, vulnerable, and seen. Because when you stop trying to force rhythm and start learning how to dance with it, that's when intimacy stops being a chore and becomes a conversation. That's when desire stops feeling like pressure and starts feeling like freedom. And that's when two people with different tempos find a way to move together in harmony. Stress kills timing more than schedules do. Most people think their lack of intimacy is due to being too busy, too tired, or not having enough time. But the real thief of desire isn't a packed calendar. It's a mind that can't slow down, a body stuck in survival mode, a nervous system that doesn't feel safe. When you're under stress, your body isn't wired for connection. It's wired for protection. And no matter how carefully you try to plan the right time, stress will quietly shut down the space that intimacy needs to breathe. Intimacy requires presence. It requires emotional availability. It requires softness. But stress hardens everything. It contracts the body, narrows the mind, and makes vulnerability feel risky instead of inviting. Even if the opportunity is there, stress can make it feel like a burden instead of a pleasure. That's why two people can finally have a night alone and still feel miles apart. Because stress doesn't care about your schedule. It cares about how safe your body feels inside your life. It's not just the big stressors, like financial pressure, work deadlines, or parenting fatigue that get in the way. It's the chronic, low-grade tension that builds up silently: the unsaid arguments, the emotional distance, the never-ending to-do list, the pressure to be everything for everyone. These things slowly chip away at your nervous system's ability to relax. And intimacy doesn't happen in a nervous system that's bracing for impact. It happens in the calm after the storm, in the quiet after connection, in the exhale, not the grind. The problem is we don't often name stress as the issue. We blame each other. One partner says, "You never want to be intimate." And the other hears, "You're failing me." And beneath that blame is often just a deep exhaustion that neither person knows how to express. Instead of saying, "I'm overwhelmed and can't access closeness right now," we say, "Not now," or worse, say nothing at all. That silence becomes a wall. And over time, that wall turns into a pattern. But here's the thing, stress isn't the enemy, it's a signal. It's your body asking for regulation, rest, and repair. It's telling you, I need safety before I can open up. And the couples who listen to that signal, who respond to each other with empathy instead of pressure, are the ones who keep intimacy alive even through chaos. They create rituals of connection, not just routines. They ask, how can I help you relax today? Instead of, why aren't you in the mood? They recognize that desire lives on the other side of emotional safety. This is why foreplay doesn't start in the bedroom. It starts with nervous system care. It starts with being gentle when your partner looks overwhelmed, with offering to do the dishes, with holding their hand when they look disconnected, with listening fully before trying to touch. These small things create emotional relaxation, and emotional relaxation is the foundation of sexual openness. You can't schedule your way into connection if stress is constantly shutting the door. You have to create space for peace first, because when your partner feels like they're drowning in pressure, they don't need more demands, they need rescue. They need comfort. They need to feel like they can breathe again. And from that breath, desire can rise again, not out of duty, but out of genuine connection. So the next time you think your problem is timing, look deeper. Ask yourselves, are we actually too busy, or are we too tense? Are we lacking time, or are we lacking safety? Because if you can address the stress, the desire will often follow. Not because you forced it, but because you made space for it. And in that space, intimacy becomes possible again, not as an obligation, but as a gift, morning, vest, night. It's the question couples often ask when trying to fix mismatched intimacy. But the real issue isn't the time on the clock, it's the natural rhythm of the body. Most people never learn their own sexual biology, let alone their partners. They try to fit intimacy into the leftover scraps of their day, hoping timing alone will solve what's actually a deeper issue, ignoring the body's internal cues. Because when it comes to desire, biology speaks first. And if you're not listening to the body clock, you're constantly fighting a battle you can't win. Every human body runs on a circadian rhythm, a 24-hour cycle that regulates everything from hormones and energy levels to mood and libido. In the morning, many people, especially those with testosterone-dominant systems, experience a natural spike in desire. Hormones like cortisol and testosterone are at their highest in the early hours. This isn't just about physical readiness. It's about alertness, confidence, and responsiveness. For these people, morning intimacy feels natural, easy, even energizing. But not everyone's body works that way. Others feel groggy, disconnected, or emotionally closed in the morning. They might need time to ease into their day before even thinking about intimacy. For them, desire builds more slowly and often peaks in the evening, once responsibilities have quieted and emotional connection has deepened. This is especially true for those who need to feel emotionally safe and mentally relaxed to access physical desire. Their desire is responsive, not instant. It doesn't follow the sunrise. It follows connection, rest, or emotional cues. This mismatch creates tension not because either person is wrong, but because no one is talking about the rhythm. One partner initiates at a time that feels natural to them, and the other pulls away, not out of rejection, but because their body just isn't there yet. The result, miscommunication, frustration, distance. One partner feels unwanted, the other feels pressured. But the root problem isn't desire, it's timing based on the wrong clock. The solution starts with awareness. Start noticing when you personally feel most open, not just physically, but emotionally. When does your body feel most awake? When does your mind feel most present? When are you most likely to say yes because you want to, not because you feel guilty? Then have that same conversation with your partner. These insights are not small, they're everything. They give you a roadmap, not just for sex, but for understanding each other's bodies without judgment. Understanding the body clock also helps with compassion. When you know that your partner's desire peaks at a time that doesn't match yours, it becomes less personal. It's not about rejection. It's about rhythm. That awareness invites creativity. Instead of trying to force both people into the same moment, you learn how to meet in the middle. Maybe it means connecting physically in the morning and emotionally at night. Maybe it means planning intentional moments during the times when both people are most receptive, even if that means adjusting the normal schedule. This approach isn't about making intimacy robotic or rigid. It's about making it honest. When you stop trying to override the body's wisdom and start honoring it, desire becomes more accessible. Not because you've added more pressure, but because you've removed the friction. You're not forcing connection. You're flowing with it. You're building a partnership that respects both biology and emotion, because ultimately, great intimacy isn't about morning or night. It's about alignment, not just in the body, but in the understanding between two people who want to meet each other where they really are. The bedroom clock can lie. The body clock never does. And if you learn to follow it, you'll stop chasing the right moment and start living in it. Intimacy doesn't start in the bedroom. It starts at breakfast. It starts with the way you greet each other in the morning, with the tone in your voice, the glance across the table, the way you listen without reaching for your phone. It begins in those small, quiet moments that seem insignificant, but actually lay the groundwork for everything that happens later. Because sexual connection doesn't begin with physical touch, it begins with emotional safety. And that safety is built through daily presence, not just nightly passion. Most people assume intimacy is a switch you flip when the timing feels right. They wait until the lights are off and the house is quiet, then hope desire will suddenly appear. But by then, it's often too late. The body might be there, but the heart isn't. Because intimacy isn't something that can be summoned out of nowhere. It's something you spend all day building in subtle, invisible ways. If the foundation of emotional connection hasn't been laid long before the bedroom, physical closeness will feel forced, disconnected, or routine. What happens at breakfast matters. The way you speak to each other sets the emotional tone for the entire day. Is there warmth, curiosity, laughter? Or is there silence, irritation, and distracted energy? When your partner feels seen, appreciated, and emotionally held early in the day, it opens a door inside them. It tells their nervous system, you're safe here. And that sense of safety, nurtured over time, becomes the gateway to intimacy that feels real and alive. People think intimacy means sex, but it's so much bigger. It's how emotionally attuned you are. It's how deeply you notice each other. It's in the way you ask how their meeting went, how you offer support when they're stressed, how you hug without needing anything in return. These things matter more than we realize. They're the invisible threads that weave two people together. And without them, sex becomes a performance instead of a connection. The mistake many couples make is trying to compartmentalize love. They divide their day into life and intimacy, treating connection like an event instead of a lifestyle. But intimacy isn't a room you walk into. It's the air you breathe all day. When you ignore your partner's emotional world from 9 to 5, you can't expect them to open up at 10 p.m. Desire doesn't live in isolation. It grows in the soil of kindness, attentiveness, and consistency. That's why tiny gestures matter so much. A gentle touch on the back, a thoughtful text in the middle of the day, a shared joke, a few moments of eye contact. None of these are grand or dramatic, but they're powerful. They say, I see you, and being seen is the deepest human need. Once someone feels emotionally visible, their body becomes more open, trust deepens, desire softens its guard. Intimacy follows naturally, not as a transaction, but as an extension of closeness. When you realize that intimacy is something you're either building or breaking in every small interaction, everything changes. You start to treat the mundane with reverence. You start to see breakfast not just as a meal, but as a moment of connection. And in doing so, you shift the energy of your entire relationship. You stop looking for big fixes and start making small choices that create emotional richness over time. Because the truth is, the bedroom is not where intimacy begins. It's where it culminates. It's the echo of everything you've said, done, and felt throughout the day. And if you've nurtured kindness, playfulness, and emotional presence from the moment the day started, then by the time you reach for each other at night, you're not trying to create connection. You're just following through on the connection that's already there. Frequency matters less than emotional presence. Yet in so many relationships, the conversation about intimacy often turns into a numbers game. How often are we doing it? Is it enough? Are we normal? These questions come from a place of fear, comparison, and unmet expectations. But the truth is, the quality of connection matters far more than the quantity of encounters. You can have sex every day and still feel alone, or you can be physically intimate less often but feel deeply connected because each moment is full of presence, not performance. We live in a culture that values consistency, routine, and productivity, even in the bedroom. We're taught to believe that more is better, and that frequency is proof of a healthy relationship. But this thinking turns intimacy into a task to be completed instead of a moment to be shared. It creates pressure. It turns desire into obligation, and it leaves little room for the natural ebb and flow that every couple goes through. Presence, on the other hand, has nothing to do with how often and everything to do with how fully. When someone is truly present, they're emotionally engaged. They're attuned. They're not just touching your body, they're listening to your heart. They're making space for you to feel safe, desired, and accepted. That kind of connection can't be measured by frequency. It's felt in the depth of a glance, the warmth of silence, and the softness of vulnerability. Think about the moments you felt truly connected to someone. It probably wasn't about how often it happened, but how real it felt. Emotional presence is the difference between going through the motions and actually being there with someone. It's the difference between checking off a box and having an experience that nourishes both of you. When presence is missing, even frequent sex can feel cold and disconnected. But when presence is there, even brief moments become rich with meaning. Couples who struggle often focus on increasing frequency without addressing what's underneath. They think more sex will fix the distance. But the real issue isn't the number, it's the disconnection. You can't solve emotional absence with physical repetition. The body can't fully open where the heart feels unseen. That's why some of the most important work couples can do isn't in the bedroom. It's in the emotional space they create for each other outside of it. When one partner feels emotionally invisible, pressure for more frequent intimacy only deepens the divide. It becomes a cycle of misunderstanding. One person feels rejected, the other feels overwhelmed. But neither of them is really being heard. What's usually missing is not sex, it's safety. It's the experience of being emotionally held. And once that's in place, frequency often finds its own natural rhythm, free from pressure or expectation. Presence also allows room for change. Life shifts, kids, work, health, stress, grief. All these things affect desire. And if your relationship is built only on how often you're intimate, those seasons will break you. But if your connection is rooted in emotional availability, in real presence, then you can weather those seasons together. You can communicate openly, adjust with compassion, and stay close even when sex takes a back seat. Intimacy is not a performance to maintain. It's a connection to cultivate. The most powerful moments between partners are often the ones where they feel emotionally seen, where there's mutual attention, where both people are fully in the room. Not just physically, but mentally and emotionally too. So if you're wondering how often you should be intimate, maybe ask a better question. How present are we when we are? Because that answer will tell you more about the health of your connection than any number ever could. And in the end, it's not the frequency that sustains love, it's the presence that deepens it.